If you got no life and there's nowhere to go, then tune in to the Animation Truman Show. Well, this is my first live stream in heck of a long time. And there's a few questions in my little list of sort of my agenda tonight to be answered. So the first question I'm going to answer, I guess the first question should be, where the heck have you been? Sir, I have no excuse. There's been other stuff going on, but basically I've gotten episodes 1 and 2 ready for, release as full 30-minute episodes. And so, that was a bit of a job. Had to write the music. The webisodes only went up to about a third to half, I think, way through episode 2. So now we have episodes 1 and 2 out there, and there it is. Okay, so it looks like concurrent viewers. Where the heck are all my concurrent viewers? This is very bad. Nobody cares. Well, okay, this is nothing new. However, the live streaming format is still a great way to sort of enforce some discipline. And since I've got episodes 1 and 2 out there, it's time to get rocking on episode 3. So, some of you will come along and watch this later, not live, and that's fine. I don't blame you. So the first question on my agenda today is, what's with the hair? And I'm crossing that question out on my other screen. The answer is, a few months ago I decided to just let it grow. And I'm kind of liking it. I think I'm like pulling it off. So anyway, that's the question. Now, another question might be, what about the format of the Animation Truman Show? And by the way, look at this. Here's my list of stuff. Trust me, I'm going through it really fast. I'm not going to waste a lot of time blabbing. Long story short is, Animation Truman Show continues now. Hey, Art, or Amar. But I don't foresee making any changes. My basic philosophy about YouTubing hasn't really changed. And so this is just, we're at the point where it's time to do animation again. So I'm just going to dive in, and this is going to remain the same format it's always been, where if you really want to look over my shoulder as I'm, creating a show, 70 or 80. My plan is to let it grow down to my shoulders. I'm going all the way. So, so that's that. I'm liking it. So, okay. So the one thing I am considering though is maybe changing the name of this show to, I don't know. I'll make a note. Maybe something along the lines of Salt and Light Production or something like that. I don't know. I don't have any firm plan about it, and I don't think it frankly matters much. But there it is. So you probably would you rather look at my beautiful big me or my small me in my list? Okay, so now there's something on episode 2 I want to call people's attention to. So let me switch screens here. At the end of episode 2, which is right here, Vespar says they were here, or at least I'm pretty sure he does. I probably should listen to it and make sure. So give me half a second to put my headphones on, and let me just make sure.
They were here.
Yeah, they were here. Okay, so now as far as I'm concerned, that's a mistake. The reality is that Vespar technically does not know that the kids are I'm kind of going through that now, Amar. The kids don't know. I mean, I'm sorry, Vespar doesn't know that the kids are traveling as a group. So for that reason, it really doesn't actually make sense for him to say they were here. What he really should say was she was here. So in episode 3, which I just started, what I did was I took episode 2, took this little bit at the end that I'm going to reuse into episode 3, and I just added the line of dialogue, so it's like she was here. Okay, because at this point, the only thing Vespar knows is that TNR was there. Okay, so that's a little change. Amar, you could weigh in on this. If my sense on the episodes as released was that taking the score down a few dB generally felt more professional. Now I have some, if you look at it, there are rubber bands, running automation on the soundtrack. So I guess we want to look at this. So you can see this rubber band situation here. But generally it was a little quieter, and what felt good to me in the headphones is what I went with. Now, I may regret that. I don't know. So if anyone wants to offer any feedback, my sense going, into the past and whatnot is that because I write the score myself, I have a proclivity to run it louder, okay? Because I kind of like the music or whatever, and sometimes I have a proclivity to arguably make it sound actually a little bit over the top. And so I erred on the side of bringing it down. So if anybody wants to offer any feedback in terms of, hey, yeah, when I was watching episode 1 or 2, I kind of felt like the soundtrack just felt about right. In other words, it wasn't intrusive. It just supported the video, and it's just, you don't even notice it. That's really what you want. If my concern is if it was too hot, it draws too much attention to itself. So if anybody has an opinion about that, great. Okay, so now, Amar, I'm going to look at your question real quick. What's the plan for the next animations? Keep the same style or to push it? Great question. I had pondered the idea of going to 12 frames per second. And I tell you, my feeling right now, I went back and I looked at some animations. Particularly, I was reading an interview with Yo-Yo Shinari, and I was kind of looking at some of the stuff he's been involved with. And I really decided to firm up my commitment to trying to squeeze as much style and production value out of that 8 frame per second approach. So at this point, I'm going to stick with that. It's not for any reason other than I actually do like it, and I'm enjoying the challenge of trying to squeeze production value out of that 8 frame per second format. Okay? So occasionally, though, what happens is and if you looked at this whole show, what you would find is that there are many shots in the show where just for editing purposes or timing, I would actually speed them up. And so you wind up getting 10 or 12 frames per second on some of those shots pretty frequently, actually. And so as far as the approach to the animation itself, the approach to the work, I would say, I think that given the constraints of 8 frames per second, it is my goal to do a little bit more what a person would probably call full animation. So in other words, I want to lean on the animation a little bit more than I was, and I want to lean less on digital tools. Now, once it unfolds in practice, will that be what really happens? We'll see. We'll see. You know how I am. I mean, I say I'm going to do it a certain way, and then you just get into it. But the point is to do whatever feels right and makes the show feel right. Whatever that is, that's what we'll go with. So it's an interesting point about that. Let me switch screens here. And so if you have an opinion about the music level, let me know. If it basically sounds fine, it feels about right, then great. Okay, so now this right here, screenplay code, I wanted to just throw this out here in case anybody's interested in it, okay? Here's what it is. If you look at this, this is basically a properly formatted screenplay, okay? Well, what this actually is it's actually a language roughly descended from one that's out there called, I think it's called Fountain, or is that, yeah, Fountain. And it's a code-based way to write a screenplay. So the point is this, and I'm just throwing this out here, so if anybody wanted to use this, I would happily make it available. So here's the deal. You're writing, if you put a dollar sign in front of a line, it becomes a slug line. So this is a slug line, okay? And all the formatting is accomplished by JavaScript parsing the screenplay and then figuring out what styles to apply to each of the lines. So you could be sitting, well, in practice, what you could be doing is you could have a screen like this. You could have an HTML web page that's set to automatically update every 5 seconds or something, like refresh the page. And then you could be writing in a simple text editor, and if you put a slash in front of the line, the software knows that that's a character. If you put an asterisk, it knows that it's dialogue. If you put nothing, it knows that it's exposition. And then the only other ones would be parentheticals. If it starts with a parentheses, it knows that it's a parenthetical, like this right here. It says Tobias, and then he's saying this to the soldier. So if anybody wanted to use this, I would happily, make it available to you. It's just basically a template boilerplate HTML page with the JavaScript baked in. So then when you are over here and you just edit the screenplay, if you have an HTML page set to automatically refresh every 10 seconds or whatever, then any changes you make in the screenplay would just automatically be reflected over here. So it's not what you see is what you get, in the sense that you can click on this and start editing, but it's a real portable approach, to screenwriting, because all it takes is just a stupid text editor, and then what comes out looks really good. I mean, it looks like a properly formatted screenplay. In fact, if you hit Control P, most modern browsers will allow you to save it as a PDF, which instantly gives you the page count, right? Because obviously with a screenplay, 1 minute of screenplay equals, 1 page of screenplay equals 1 minute of screen time. So the other thing the code does is it looks at anywhere there's a slug line like this, and it automatically sticks a bookmark in the page. So, and then it loads the bookmarks here automatically. And what that means is you can actually scan through and jump from scene to scene, see what you're doing. And if you go to the end of the document, I actually put a print doc button in there so that you can do the printout thing and get it, even if only to get your page count. Although, to be fair, and then you just hit F5 to refresh the page. To be fair, if you go to the top, I actually have some code that estimates what the page count is, and that turns out to be pretty darned accurate. So anyway, like I said, if anybody's interested in that, just say the word and we'll find a way. Yeah, okay. And you know what? Using Fountain through Google Docs is probably just as good, if not better. But I will say, until I was fiddling with this, which was really just a personal challenge, I'd been using OpenOffice for screenplays for years, and I have an OpenOffice document template that maps the styles to hotkeys. So you hit Control 1 and it's a character, Control 2 and it's dialogue, that type of thing. So I did this because I'm like, I wanted to see if I could just come up with something. It only took a day to code that would make it even easier to deal with screenplay formatting, just again in a real portable kind of way. So anyway, just throwing that out there for anybody who thinks it's cool. Okay, real quick, Krita 5.2, tried it. The answer is no, not doing it. I loaded it and it immediately botched my settings. So for me, Krita 5.2 was basically a step backward in terms of reliability. And so I just said, forget it. I'm just not going to go there. Next question, Salt and Light distribution / production path. Okay, so here's the deal. A couple months ago, 6 months ago, I released my film, which was done in, I think, 2015. Okay, so I have this sort of action comedy called Clerical Errors. Okay, long story short is that was actually released for full distribution. Finally, it sort of sat on the shelf for a long time, but it's a film that was always a crowd pleaser. Like if people watch it, they always come away smiling, kind of thing. Well, we put it out for distribution, and I'm just going to say that the results have been very lackluster. It was what I expected. I didn't expect much, but I'm a little disappointed. But what that told me is that moving forward with conventional distribution with the distributor I've been using for 10 years on Salt and Light is probably not the best idea. I may change my mind about that, but basically, at this point, when you think about people's number one, how hard is it to be compliant with all the platforms in terms of their distribution, or their, their requirements? And number two, the promotional element is all important. Like, there's nothing more important than the promotional element. What I saw with Clerical Errors is, it turns out if I don't create a chick flick horse movie that has a ready audience, just ready to kind of suck it down, then I can expect to have really lousy results. So that means that my distributors, as much as they're great guys and I enjoy working with them, nice people, blah, 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 the most important thing being promotion outside of the sort of closed community that they've been working with for, years and years. I just don't have great confidence that they're going to be able to do the job. So for that reason, if you put a gun to my head right now and you say, well, what are you going to do? I'm going to actually create all 12 episodes of Salt and Light and release it like after I'm completely done. And there's no hurry, for me. So that's that. So in the meantime, I'm releasing it on YouTube because, why not? There it is. So, okay, let's get to work. How did we do on time? It took a half hour to sort of cover all the preliminaries, and I apologize for that. I haven't live streamed in a long time, and now it's, like I say, it's time to get back to work. So here's what's going on. We've got a basic recap situation from episode 2, and it sounds like Zuko's saying hello. He's chirping over there. And so let me switch to this screen. So when episode 3 starts out, we've got, on the script side of things, we've got Vespar repeats this line, "She was here," contemplates the pendant but looks up at the sound of footsteps. Soldiers come through the brush. "There's not a sight of her here, Highness." Tobias looks down, sullen. Vespar grimaces in frustration. The soldier says, I suppose we'll resume the search in the morning." "Morning? Seriously, are you trying to help her escape?" Tobias looks up, concerned at Vespar's attitude, and Vespar waves the pendant dramatically. "I even managed to find this." And then Tobias is like, "Highness, the men need rest. Tianara cannot get far in the forest at night." Vespar's hand falls. He looks away, irritated, crossing his arms. And Tobias turns to the soldiers like, let's regroup at dawn. Okay, so then Vespar, he's irritated. "Managing these troops is just slowing us down. We need a better plan." Tobias, perhaps. Vespar kind of complains about Asher a little bit. And so we can stop there. But basically, they have a little bit of an argument. And it pretty much boils down to Vespar is uncomfortable with the situation. And ultimately, it's going to be his choice to strike off with Tobias on their search and leave the managing the troops behind, right? That's kind of the concept here. So anyway, with that, we have a minute of content here that can be animated, so we can really dive into that. Now, getting back to the show, interestingly, this is kind of the recap stolen from the previous episode. Changed the line, so he's saying,
"She was here."
She was here. And then I realized, this is kind of funny, I realized the next thing that happens is the soldiers come through and get Vespar's attention, and then we got to go on with new animation. Well, the interesting thing was that when I looked at episode 2, I was able to go way back earlier in the episode where Luca was dealing with the soldiers, and I had been thinking about using these same 2 soldiers in this scene. So I'm like, okay, we'll just right here, when these guys come in, I'm like, okay, we'll just reuse those 2 shots right there, that one and that one, and then we can move forward from there. So, hey Bruno, by the way, hello. All right, so let's jump back to episode 3. And so now we've got,
"She was here."
and then these guys come through. I'll come up with some line of dialogue for him to say, or of course we could modify the animation to take the dialogue out. But So that's where we're at. So let's jump back to here and get to work. Okay, so this scene is going to be episode 3, scene 1. Okay? And what we're going to do is, looking at the script, I think what we want is we want a shot of Vespar who, the soldiers coming through the brush gets his attention. That's basically what we're doing here. Okay? So I'm going to look at... Yeah, actually, let's go back here. I would even say that we could really just have him... We could actually expand this dialogue. Out of sight of Her Highness. Okay, so all we have to do is actually just expand his dialogue. So that's pretty simple. I think this is a Krita scene, so it probably would behoove us... I think it would behoove us to go ahead and make a copy of that scene and render it and just get it in there correct. So if it is indeed a Krita scene, which I expect it is, so let's look at 735. So scene, are we on the right screen? Yeah. So we want 735. And that does not appear to be a Krita scene. Okay, so that means we got to jump, unfortunately, over to Tahoma. So 735 is what we're looking for. So now this is the part of the process that, you know, guys, there's no glamour to this. There's no curated content. Unfortunately, this is just me doing what I do. And either you enjoy watching the real, you know, what it really takes to create a cartoon, or you don't watch my live stream, I guess, right? Okay, so this is going to be scene 735. 735. I know you're here somewhere. Right there. Now that's not the right. Is that the right one? That's interesting. The thumbnail. Well, okay, let's pull it up and see what we got. This is wrong. So we've already run into an issue. Okay, we're going to solve it this way. Actually, here's what we're going to do. Watch this. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to all we have to do is change the dialogue. So that means, and I should have thought of this before because this is really the smart way to do it. Let's take scene number 735 and just import the animation frames and then modify the lip sync over top of it, right? Okay, so 735. So what we're going to do is we're going to import animation frames. And then that makes sense because then we're saving this as 03-01. I'm changing my scene format, my naming format a little bit. I'm going to be putting the episode 3 in a subfolder. We'll see how it goes. So anyway, add images, and we want scene number 735. And if anybody has any questions along the way here, just pop it in the chat, and I'll do my best. Okay, 735 is there. There's the rendered frames. Let's just select them all and bring them in. Okay, after you do something like this in Krita, generally a good idea to save your work immediately. You know, you're chewing up a bunch of memory here. Okay, that's interesting. Okay. So I'm going to save my work. Okay, so now what we see here is that the original shot was done at full HD, whereas this shot is broadcast HD. So what we're going to do is we're going to simply add a transform mask to this layer, hit the A key, and let's just scale this in. Now we can take the opportunity to also you know, maybe make this a little bit tighter shot if we want to. Or, looking at the prior shot, we actually could do a push in as well. Yeah, why not? It actually feels appropriate. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to say we're pushing in on Vespar, and there is a certain amount of tension to this whole sequence. So what I'm going to do is, here in episode 3, I'm actually going to go ahead and push in a little bit here. And excuse me, I'm itching my nose. So that, and then this shot is going to push in as well. And then once Vespar has his reaction, then we'll probably stop the pushing in and let the dialogue take place without too much disruption. Okay, so if that's what we're going to do, then the way we're going to do that in Krita is we're going to go to our animation curves and just insert a single keyframe. Okay? Now, because we inserted the keyframe, Krita forgot what the modification was of the frames. So I'm going to have to resize them, and that's fine. So I'm going to put it in right here, like this. And then once we go ahead, we're not going to bake it in. Once we get this transformed the way we want it, then we'll go ahead and just turn the transform mask off. We don't have to see it while we're working, right? So we'll just turn it off, get the lip sync done, and then go from there. So that means this, I'm going to say about frame 80. Now, I have no idea what the frame rate on the original shot was. Let me look at that real quick. On my other screen, I'm just going to look at the frame rate. Okay, this original shot was actually 24 frames per second. So unfortunately, I don't really love the idea of doing this, but for now I'm going to go ahead and put this to 24 as well, just so we can see what we've got here. And again, save your work, especially if you start working with transform masks. You know, the capabilities in Krita, if you're creative with layers and transform masks and things like that, the capabilities are great. But you do want to save frequently, okay, so you don't lose work. All right, so let's just take a look at this. Okay, this would be... Oh, that was another thing on Krita 5.2. Okay, when the Krita 5 version series started, going from the 4 versions to the 5 versions, Krita broke the rewind button. Okay, so basically, animators be damned, you know, kind of was the the attitude apparently, because the whole idea that you're doing anything that involves a timeline where there's no way to rewind is ridiculous. But there it is. Okay, so what they did was in recent versions they changed it so that you hit the space bar, and if you hit the space bar again, you just stop. But if you hit Shift space bar, that lets you rewind. Okay, so now if you look in your hotkeys, you'll find that you can do what I used to do, which is set the rewind button to the W key, because for me that was what it always was in Vegas and Reaper, the other programs I use like for video editing or music. That broke in all versions of Krita 5. Okay, so the hotkeys will tell you that return to the first frame is the W key, but yet it doesn't work. Why am I telling you this? In Krita 5.2, the version, you know, the one I downloaded, which admittedly it was the Linux version, okay? Everything about that was broken. Now none of it works. The W key didn't work. The Shift spacebar didn't work. Everything quit working as far as being able to just rewind to the first frame of your animation scene. So for me, if the new release is careless enough to introduce a problem like that, then I don't really want to deal with it. I don't want to use it. So there it is. So I'm sticking with this version I'm using right now is pretty darn stable and performant. This is 5.0.6. I've had this version. I've been using it for quite a while actually. Okay, so you know, feels pretty good. I think what we'll do is we'll just put the other transform mask key here. Okay, so hitting the A key. So all we have to do is just put in another key, and then we're going to hit Shift and expand this a little bit. So what that's going to do is it's going to interpolate between the two, and of course Krita has to really think about the interpolation. But as you can see, we're doing a little push in here. Okay, and now we clearly have enough time to go ahead and get all the lip sync in that has to fit right in this scene. So now let's kill the transform mask. And then what we're going to do is, and by the way, normally I would take the whole thing and just shrink it down. But in this case, since we're using the transform mask and we're doing the push anyway, excuse me, no big deal. We'll just use the transform mask to resize it. So the actual scene is 1280 by 720. Okay? So now what we need to do is add another, we'll just call it, what we usually do is mouth, lip sync layer on there, and then let's just look at what he does in terms of speech. Okay, and looking at the script, we need to know what the line of dialogue is. And by the way, you know, anybody who tuned in because you want to see, you know, sort of like pencil test animation, stuff like that, I'll be getting to that shortly, actually. But I wanted to go ahead and get the get this lip sync fix in and done with, so that we can then move on from there. So he says, "Not a sign of Her Highness." Okay, that's the line of dialogue. So now what I'm going to do is, he says, "Not okay, let's just do it here. So I'm going to go ahead and we might as well just hit the G key. There's two ways to do it. If you want to draw filled shapes, you can hit the G key, which is the freehand path tool. Or, in my case, I also created a brush for that. Was it this one? Yes. So you can do that type of thing. Or, in my case, this would work too, because it's just a brush that has nice pressure for, you know, you can fill it in really quickly. So for something like what I'm doing here, so Control Insert puts in a animation keyframe here, and then this keyframe obviously should be deleted. And he says, okay, so he says, "Not a sign of." Okay, and what I'm going to do is, normally at 8 frames per second, I normally put in animation or lip sync keys every 2 frames. So in this case, it would be more like every 6, because we're at 24 frames per second. So let's just go. He's going to say, "Of Her Highness." Boom. Okay, and then obviously it's a little dark. You can see the difference there. Probably we can just dial down the opacity of the lip sync layer, and that's going to probably feel about right. Now, to be meticulous, there is going to be a little bit of a variance there, because this layer is now transparent. In other words, it'd probably be better to actually change the color. So we can do that. So let's do it this way. I'm going to select all of these frames, and then I'm going to hit Control M to pop up a curves tool. Okay, so what we want to do is just raise the color like so. Now you could use a filter mask, which would apply this non-destructively to the layer. That's going to be less performant, because Krita constantly has to recalculate, you know, the filter mask. Something like this, where you kind of know what you're doing and you know what you're after, just use multi-frame. And what it's going to do is it's going to apply the filter destructively to every frame that's currently in the selection. So boom. Okay? And the result is, there it is. And just in case I have to make a correction, which I will, I'm going to hit Control and click that. So now I've changed the color to the actual color that the lip sync is supposed to be. And now I can kind of go in and start dialing that in a little bit. I'm hitting the E key to erase. And then here in half a second, we will look at whether the lip sync turned out to be about right in terms of what he's saying. Okay. This feels like it's probably a little large. So, getting back to your question, Amar, if you're still here, about the animation process going forward. In the time I've been off from live streaming, I've really come to appreciate just slowing down. And as I mean, we've talked about this here before, but it's the idea that you're kind of bragging to yourself and others about of how fast you can do stuff, but then the quality's not there, and you wind up having to redo it all anyway, which is insanity. I've been finding myself really enjoying anchoring into just slowing way down and just focus on get it right, make it look good kind of thing, make it feel good. Okay, so he says, to be exact on his line of dialogue, he says, "Not a sight of it, Your Highness." Looks pretty good, actually. Okay, other than actually this. Okay, yeah, this is actually the old lip sync and kind of an example here of what I was talking about. This really is a little bit rough, so let's go ahead and fix it. Not, see how rough that is? Okay, now, notably, actually, okay, I was going to catch myself because if you think about it, these lip shapes last for several frames. Well, the problem is if I was painting into the actual frame, I would have to repeat that process for every frame, right? But by having the lip sync on a different layer, it's going to cover up all those frames that run underneath of it. I hope that makes sense. I'm sure it probably does. I mean, you guys are pretty smart, so you understand what I'm saying. But yeah, and I appreciate your comment there, Amar. It's and you I mean, I have been paying attention here and there, and I like what you're doing, man. Okay, look at that. What a mess that is. Let me see. Okay, so actually right there we need to insert a blank keyframe. Okay, so he says, "Not a sign of Her Highness." Okay, and then this needs to actually have a blank keyframe there. Okay, I see. I'm wrong. Let me delete that. What we really need to do is go here and then close this up a bit. So hit that, and so anyway, I guess I will say it's nice to be back. It's definitely nice to be getting back into just doing the grunt work of animation. I'm looking forward to. I'm seriously thinking I'm going to be able to raise the bar a little bit on episode 3. Just make it, just kind of raise the quality even a little bit more. Also with Midjourney and Nelly, that will help me lock down the backgrounds with less research. Yeah, and I haven't really played with those too much. Everybody's talking about it. I mean, the Dolly, thanks, Amar. The Dolly thing, I saw some stuff today about that. Okay, and while we're here and we're talking about quality, why don't we fix something about this character? I'm going to call this beard fix. This is actually a great example of the kind of thing I'm talking about. I'm looking at this crap right here, and I'm going, okay, we let that go before, but why don't we aim a little higher? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just get a little bit of this guy's beard in there. Give this just a little bit more texture. I think that's the biggest thing I've learned, particularly in the time I've been doing this, and also since I've been off, I'm developing an obsession with really anchoring into the process and focusing on quality and really making sure that this entertains me, that it really feels good to me. And to be honest with you, when I went to do a final review of the show, okay, now in this case, let's go ahead and insert a. Anyway, I was worried. I was like, I hope I don't. I mean, if I watch this show and it does not make me chuckle, you know, I would throw the sucker on the shelf and say, okay, try something else. I would. Sounds horrible, but I'm just saying. So fortunately, I didn't get very far into episode 1 where I actually found that it did make me laugh. I was really happy to, like, actually I do kind of like this, I guess I've been through that a few times in all the time I've been working on this show. But in all my years of arrogance as an artist in doing animation, I finally came to the fact that doing myself a disservice not studied for master animators. Yeah. It all depends on what you want to do. I mean, sometimes I've been somewhat disparaging of the, I've made the argument that and the more I've looked at the Disney's history through the 50s, 60s, into the 70s, the more I do stand by this assessment is that, and this is a horrible thing to say, this is the kind of thing that'll probably get people, mad at me, but it is true that the 9 Old Men uncovered some amazing things, okay? In terms of timing, squash and stretch, I don't remember all the terms, like recoil or easing, things like that. But the reality is, if you actually look at their work, if you look at the work, you look at, there's some good stuff in there, like Jungle Book. Certainly the stuff Milt Kahl did on Shere Khan was amazing. But overall, it turns out that those techniques just don't carry the day. They just don't. It turns out if you look at the Rescuers, to a degree, certainly the Black Cauldron, what it turns out is that if the script and the casting aren't right, animation will not ever save the day. And I think that's really significant, because when I look at some anime or other kinds of things where the story, where the writing is good and the characterization's good and the humor is good, and some people would say, well, that was a different time, and I take that point. But remember, Disney was almost bankrupt several times, okay? So it's not like people back then didn't know this isn't really that great of a movie. I'm not talking about any one in particular. Okay. But my point is that it's the storytelling that carries the day. Okay, now this is interesting. Okay, so look at what we have here. Okay. So we got to turn this off. Now this is very important. We need to move this. We'll put this down on the background layer just to get it away from these other layers. What we need to do here is put these guys in a group. And my point about anime. Okay, now that's interesting. Why would that be? We may have to take a different approach to this. Well, I know I can solve it by just redoing the transform mask. So probably the right path here is to save my work. We'll turn this transform mask off. So Krita's always had some bugginess that has to do with the way it handles the buffers, like the pixel data that's storing in the background that you don't necessarily always see. And this is an example of that. If we take the transform mask that worked perfectly on this layer, but then apply it to the group of layers, there really is no reason why we shouldn't be seeing all this over here. That's a little strange. So let's see what happens if we just reconfigure with a new transform mask and see what happens. So we're going to add a transform mask. And now, if it still doesn't work, then I'll eat my words. But my suspicion is we'll hit the A key, and I was wrong. I was wrong. Okay, so this is bad. What we're going to have to do, well, it figures we'd run into a technical problem right out of the gate. So if this layer were scaled destructively, then the transform mask would be doing its job correctly. So the solution is to do just that, is to scale this layer destructively. The easiest way to do that is actually to add a transform mask, but don't animate it. Just take a transform mask. We might have to make some adjustments on the positioning of some of the other stuff, like the beard corrections. We might have to actually go in and make some tweaks, but that's okay. Not the end of the world. You know what? This is the Animation Truman Show, and that means that you just run into what you run into. And sometimes you run into stuff that kind of messes you up a bit. Okay, so now, Amar, I'm going to take a moment and look through you got a lot here. You wanted to enhance your animation skills. Yeah, okay, background paintings, got it. The AI stuff. Projecting somewhere towards the end of the year to get back on track for the personal animation project. Okay, cool, yeah. In all my years of arrogance, okay, I guess I already read that. I think for me, it'll help me to get that light bulb moment, to get my animation, to get that movement I want. Right, and that's what I was trying to say is, of course you can learn from the 9 old men. Of course you can learn from the 9 or 12 or how many, I think it's 12 principles of animation. You should learn that stuff, but I'll never stop beating the drum of there is no scenario where those skills carry the day. They just make it better. They can make it beautiful, but they will not carry the day by themselves. And so obviously having a story to tell is essential. For a lot of people, that means just a very simple gag, you know. It's less than a minute long. It might be 10 seconds long. It's just something that, you know, is funny or whatever. Okay, so now what I need to do here is apply the transform mask. I don't trust Krita. Let me save my work. I don't trust Krita to flatten the layer correctly. It might, and I guess we could try, but usually it's safer to put these guys in a group and then merge the group. Usually that's going to be a much more reliable way to bake in transform or filter masks into a layer. So we'll see if it works. Okay, so yeah, and I mean obviously you can't, there's no such thing as too much learning or practice, obviously. So you have to have the full understanding of it to minimize or alter it. I agree, but at the same time, let me finish reading your comments. Understand how to create convincing animation, make me well enough, so I can then animate whatever. Right. I get where you're at. I get where you're at in the sense that this is a good thing, my friend. You're returning to rediscovering what it was about art and creativity that thrilled your soul when you were young. Trust me, dude, I get it. I've had that same experience. I think I know what you're talking about. Okay, so now this actually has the shrinking going on, which is not what we want. So we're just going to get rid of the transform mask entirely. Okay, so now we've got to do, unfortunately, some fixes because I think the mouse is going to be in the wrong place as well. Okay, so no problem. In all reality, we probably, this is getting a little complicated, but what we could do is put the beard and the mouth in a group and add a transform mask to them. Now, we don't have to animate it, okay? We just have to get this in the right position, and that's where using a transform mask is probably a good idea because we'll have some latitude to tweak it a bit. Okay, so why is that in the wrong place? Well, you know what? It actually kind of figures that the very first thing I did here on episode 3 has bopped me into a real debacle, a real debacle. And you know what? I think the simplest solution is going to be this. I'm going to take this, smack it in here, and then size it a bit. I guess we'll anchor to this corner, but I'm just going to redo it. Anything that's like too clunked out or whatever, I'll just redo it. Yep, let's just redo it, and then I'm just going to change this. I'm going to get rid of that keyframe and just repaint this. It'll be faster just to fix it, right? So boom, 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 boom. And you know, and this is another thing that kind of speaks to what we were talking about. The resistance to failure, which causes you to try to get everything right the first time, makes you resent when you have to do things over. What I'm finding is that when you're true to your creative muse, like you, Amar, is you're trying to do things that please you, that you like to watch, that you like to feel in your animation work. The more you do that, first of all, the actual journey, the work itself is a pleasure because you're just making yourself happy. And it's your standards. It's got nothing to do with kudos or social dividends from anybody on Discord or YouTube or anything. It's all about you. If you do that, not only are you going to enjoy the journey more, but you're not going to resent when you have to go in and redo things because you know you kind of forgive yourself and say, I only knew what I knew. I could only do as well as I could if you honored yourself in the process. And if you didn't honor yourself in the process, then, which I've done a million times, where I've sacrificed for various types of social dividends rather than the rewards of really doing undeniably great work. That's the difference for me. And I think it is for you too. You've got the hunger to just want to do undeniably great work, whatever that takes. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And the thing is, you will do great work. I already see the improvement in the stuff I've seen coming out of you, you know. So let me see here. Let me understand. Yes. Now, you can really hardly overstate the value as a creative person of finding a way to make your process feel real good. Because you got to live with this stuff for a long time, you know? So this is kind of, there we go. That feels pretty good, doesn't it? Nice. And I feel like I've got maybe a little bit here. But I tell you, Amar, it's true. I've been more I've been able to just anchor into like what I'm doing right now, where you're just dealing with these details. It's been so much more fun. Not being in a hurry. Okay, now I think I'm going to say, so this is exactly what I'm talking about. I'm going to actually flip this, see what happens here. Okay, the flipping mechanism in Krita is not as cool as it used to be. It used to center on, it was more intuitive. But you know, you can tell here flipping the screen that this is a little out of balance. So this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. I really want to, let's get this right, you know? We got this volume here, but it's kind of lacking over here. And I don't think we have to go in and do a lot of work with the prior frame. We could do a little, and this should probably be a little bit on the brown side. But and here's the thing about animation in that regard too, by the way, and it speaks back to what I was saying about the Disney guys, the 9 Old Men, is that especially in the anime space, you know, it really is, it's about the drawing more than about the movement. It's not that the movement's not important. Of course it's important. But it's really more about the drawing. And if you're a little chimpy on your drawing because you're kind of in a hurry to see things move, you're generally not going to do as good a work, I think. That's my opinion. Others may disagree, but... Okay, so now the question is, what about the mouth? Okay, the mouth is floating over here somewhere. It's way the heck over there. So I'm going to take the mouth, and for the mouth, I am going to add a transform mask. I'm going to hit the A key, and obviously we need to drag this up yonder. And I believe that this is going to be too big as well, so I'm guessing that that will be somewhat close-ish to what we want. Okay, that feels pretty good. And so now what we can do is take the mouth, and let's save our work. Save, save, save. Let's flatten this layer. So this needs to happen for him. Okay, I got you. You haven't actually added anything new recently. Okay, so I'm going to flatten the layer and see what happens. And we'll see if it... Okay, if it's just a simple filter or transform on a single layer, flattening the layer does tend to work okay. For this particular frame, I'm just going to actually rotate that a skosh and just go like that. So the changes I'm making right now with the transform tool are baked right into the frame. Okay, so I think we're there. Save that. This does not actually need to be a group, so I'm going to move that back up there. And this to there. This group can be deleted. We really don't even need that group. And let's see if everything feels right. Okay. Additionally, the fact of the matter is we could just do the push in Vegas in the edit, actually. So let's see what we've got. His line of dialogue is, "Not a sign of Her Highness. Not a sign of Her Highness." Perfect. It's perfect. Okay, so we save our work. And let's render this baby, get it into the show, and then we'll look at the next shot. Now, I didn't intend to go like mega long tonight, so we'll see. We'll see what we do here. So Control R. This is going to be think about how this is going to work. I believe this is going to be episode -03, and then this is 03-01, and the folder's called render. I do believe that is correct. Let me look on my other screen at my file paths just to make sure I'm not making a dumb mistake here. Bear with me, friends. We're going to Salt and Light, Scenes, E for episode 3, and this did not work. So I'm clicking the E key. Oh, there it is. Episode 3, 0301, render. Okay, that is correct. Okay, and then that's going to be /. There's an argument to be made for having the base name be frame or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter for every scene in the show could have the same naming for the frames if they're coming from a different folder. However, gosh, I think it'd probably be safer to just stick with my old method. So I'm going to say 03. Well, actually, no, it's going to be 01 period. So scene 1. And are we doing all 100 frames? I guess we are. Image sequence, it's a ping sequence. Go. We'll let this render, and then we'll get her into the show, and let's hope that Krita doesn't decide to blow up for some silly reason. Okay, let's jump over to the show, like that, and what? Okay, so this is, we're going to take this shot here and take it out, and then we need to import. Oh boy, I need a tool clean project media. Get rid of everything that's not included. Okay, and so now we're gonna go import, and we're going scenes. And as I said, if I click anywhere here and hit the E key, it should jump to episode 3 because it's the only folder that starts with the letter E. Okay, so open the sequence, and it's 24 frames per second. Sorry to violate the 8 frames per second rule, but this was a legacy shot that was done eons ago, and it was back when I was still working at 24 frames per second. So, sign of a highness. Okay, so now what we need to do is put in that push. Boom, that's it. So let's just see how this feels.
She was here.
Not a sign of her highness. Yeah, I like it. Now after he says that, I would say, boom, we're going to cut immediately to Vespar. So we can probably bring that down a bit. Okay, let's go back over here. And now what we're going to do is we'll save our work and kill this. We don't need it anymore. Actually, come to think of it, strike that. I'm going to pull this back up just because I'm thinking about the background. All the leaves and stuff. And by the way, that background is not the actual background. This is the background. I mean, it's a basic Krita foliage brush anyway, so I guess we're good. Okay. So we'll save that. Let's create a new scene, and we're just going to get rocking here on the next Vespar scene. So we're going to create that. Immediately switch this to 8 frames per second. The likelihood is that 80 frames is the most we'll need. And let's immediately save our work. Episode 3, 0302. Boom, boom. 03-02. Now, wait a second. Did I name this? I guess I did name it 0301. Seems kind of stupid to have the 3's in there, but I guess I can always change my mind later. So, all right, what do we do with this? Okay, let's go to our red pencil and our regular pencil situation. And what we're going to do is figure out what Vespar's response is going to be. Okay. So, by the way, who else is here? We got Amar's been floating around. We got 3 concurrent viewers. I am curious who's lurking. Okay. So, on the story. Okay, I just realized we have a problem. Dumb mistake, but yet understandable considering I'm trying to leverage the old shots that I did. The problem is that actually technically Tobias is supposed to be in here. So I wonder if So let's look at the script. So we've got Tobias looks down sullen. He doesn't actually need to be in this shot. Vespar grimaces in frustration. I suppose we'll have to resume the search in the morning. Vespar scowls. So what I've got to figure out from a animation / entertainment standpoint is, how do I want to bring Tobias into this scene? I want to think about that. I probably won't come up with that here tonight just on the fly. But I really want to think about that. Instead of baking Tobias into this moment when the soldiers show up, he could, because the idea is that Tobias is really, he's kind of like Uncle Iroh in Avatar. You know, he's kind of looking after Vespar kind of thing. He's not supposed to be like Iroh, but it's kind of a similar relationship in that he's uniquely loyal to Vespar. He's there to support Vespar. Even when Vespar is a little off track, Tobias is going to support him, but yet try to protect him from himself, kind of thing. And it's not at all essential that Tobias be right there when these soldiers first show up, is, I mean, the immediate point here. So Tobias looks down sullen. So the one thing we do know for sure is this. Is that Vespar is going to be contemplating this pendant. So I want to make this really, really simple shapes, like almost like Mark Crilly level. Very, very simple. Think about how I want to, and I'm feeling like that's not what I want. That's too big. So I'm going to go over here. I'm kind of thinking about the rule of thirds. And Vespar was holding it, so let's just put a circle there to represent his hand. And specifically, by the way, he had it in his right hand, so let's not be stupid and put it in the wrong hand, which would be totally something I would do. Okay, so obviously what we're going to do here is animate the response. And so what I'm thinking is, economically, we could actually have a silhouette here of the soldier, and then he just moves into frame right at the beginning, right? Let's save our work. That's pretty good. That's pretty good composition. So he's going to go from here to here. So that's how the shot will start. So let's go ahead and go Control X, Control V. That immediately takes this and puts it in a separate layer, and we can go. We'll go silhouette soldier. Okay. So let's just go ahead and get that correct out of the gate, and we don't need to. I'm going to hit the G key and the E key so I can actually just erase, and then I'm going to jump right into color here, because we can always add a filter mask to tweak the color of it, right? So I'm looking at the drawings in the other frame of the soldiers, and they have these sort of hoodie, almost KKK things, frankly, that they're wearing. And now, actually, you know what occurs to me is I want to work in reverse. What I'm doing right now is wrong. What I should do is get him exactly where I want him to be at the end, and then go backwards. And the reason for that is, if I put him off screen first, then I have to keep redrawing frames and adding to the drawing. Whereas if I work in reverse, I can put it in the correct position at the beginning, scale it up as it moves, you know, in reverse time back out of frame. I hope this makes sense. So So in other words, this is the guy I'm trying to draw, is right there. All right, he's got sort of a, yeah, like that. Okay, so there he is, and then I'll hit Control Insert. And by the way, I'm gonna hit Alt M, which for me is this filter, colors, color to alpha. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the red out. So my default setting for this filter is to remove the red, and as you can see, it removed the red from the sketch. So now we're in good shape. All right, so now all we have to do is, we could use a transform mask, but in this case, it's probably just as easy to do it this way and then put some of our own easing in there. So I'm going to say, okay, boom, boom. Just a slight rotation. So this is the easing. I'm saying that each frame should be a little more of a dramatic move than the one before. So we're just going to do 2 frames because that's half a second at 8 frames per second. I said 2, I meant 4. Okay, I can't speak English today. Okay. That feels good. Okay, so now what you do in Krita is you just grab these 4 frames and you right mouse click and go mirror frames. It just reverses them. Okay. There it is. So now we've solved the problem of the soldier coming into frame while Vespar's standing there looking at the pendant. And so we've got, it's a good composition. Everything feels pretty balanced and whatnot. And then, so we'll kind of do this Ed Tadeo style where we do it with, not exactly stick figures, but certainly simplified drawings just to get the feeling of the motion right. And after he gets into frame, boom, I'm going to say Vespar probably will react about here. So let's look at that one more time. Zoom, bam. Okay, so it looks like it's on frame 8. Of course I can move the frames around anyway. So let's go Control Insert. Go back to our red pencil. Now, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the skins. And again, keep this simple. So there's the hand. Certain things like his elbow will probably be anchored in about the same spot as they were before. So his chin's going to come around like this a little bit. And we really want to have 2 frames of that. So here, there's his center line on his head. Okay. So now there's the top of his little hoodie thing. And there's sort of a little piece that jumps out like that. So let's just go ahead and give him an eye line. I tell you, art is largely about measuring. It's very much about measuring. And here, boom, boom, boom. We'll let it come down one more little niche, notch, bit, whatever you want to say. A little bit. Okay. Yeah, that's perfect. Isn't it? Feels good. Shift spacebar. Boom. Bop. Okay, in Vespar's actual response, yeah, so what he should do is he should really turn, scowl. So probably that should be cutting to a close shot. Actually, we should grab this pose and cut to close. So I'm just giving myself a couple guidelines here for the uniform. I don't like that. Okay. Now we're going to go in real close here, and we're going to get specific a little bit here with Vespar's anatomy. Obviously, it's a pretty long shot, so it can be a bit of a simplified cartoon, if you will. And then what we'll do is we'll have, as he turns, his expression becomes more, well, actually that's not true. I mean, if you really look at the prior shot, I'm going to erase this. If you look at the prior shot, the truth of the matter is he's already in a scowling kind of frame. So, and this is only going by, I mean, this is one frame. Obviously at 24 frames per second, it's 3, but the point is any little change in expression here is not something you're going to see. Okay, that's interesting. What did I do there? Yeah, this is actually a duplicate. Yeah, there we go. That looks pretty good. Let's go here. So this is the drawing part that Amar was talking about earlier. You know, let's get the drawing right. In terms of characterization, that looks pretty good. In terms of costuming, it's not quite right. In the original, he has this sort of a, I don't know, some kind of diadem or something on his helmet. So whoever's here watching has not identified themselves. Identify yourself. Okay, this frame is less critical because it is a transitional frame. It's just a tween to get us from the initial pose that we're going to reside on for quite a while, and then get us over to this. So this is the drawing that actually really matters. Okay, I'm going to turn the skins off so I'm not getting distracted. I'm not a huge fan of onion skins, but for keeping features lined up correctly, it can definitely be useful. But once I'm having to sort of get the characterization into the character, I prefer not to have the skins on. To me, they just distract. When I'm drawing, I want to kind of feel like each drawing is going to have its own integrity, if you will. Well, that's pretty good. Again, this is a tween. You can get away with a little bit less care in the drawings on a tween. For obvious reasons, it's on the screen for such a short period of time that your brain doesn't have time to actually digest what you saw. So you're still here. And nobody else is talking tonight, man. We'll see if it picks up a bit. But if I'm going to be doing this, I expect I'm going to be live streaming pretty. I'll just get back in the groove of just doing it, man. Okay, let me pull back a little bit. Sometimes, I hit the tab key. It's kind of nice, actually, to just get all the distractions of the interface out of your face. I need to look on the other screen at I'm actually looking at episode 2. I actually do not think there ever was a shot of Vespar that showed his full regalia. Now, possibly back here during the no. So I can pretty much do what I want as far as costuming goes, because we never did see the full costume before. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and close up episode 2 so it's not distracting me or consuming resources. And I'm going to kind of reference the other soldiers for a bit of a concept on Vespar's, as I say, full regalia. I mean, honestly, even if it was there in episode 2, no one would remember much detail about his costuming. Okay, and this is wrong. This is wrong. Oops. E key. Yeah, this is... Yeah, he's actually got... This is kind of a weird costume, actually. And there's actually another layer of clothing underneath this. So... Okay, so... I guess what we'll do is we'll make sure that this looks right. Well, actually, in episode 2, he really didn't have the, these sort of wristbandy type things going on. He just had a regular cuff. So, and I'm thinking anatomically, I probably need to raise up those elbows a bit. Let's flip it and see. Yeah, probably. Okay, so now in episode 2, he's holding... Well, this is kind of interesting. That pendant is pretty freaking big, actually. Yeah, I mean, it's a big... It would have to be almost 4 inches across, actually, based on the way I drew it in episode 2, so... So, we'll go with that. That's fine. Okay. So, let's go ahead and liquefy this a little bit. Okay. I guess what we'll do, the part of his costuming that was never made clear in episode 2, it would have to do with whatever's going on around his waist. So what the heck, let's just play with that a bit. Boy, I wish that they hadn't, you know, back in the old Krita 4 days, and now it's acting stupid. It's locking up. And I haven't saved in a while. There was a time when Krita would... I don't even know how to describe it. Center the image intelligently and flip it intelligently. So if this was a small part of the image, there was a time when if I hit the M key right now, it would flip it right here. I would just see this flip. And, you know, somebody decided that was a really bad idea at some point, and they changed it. So now when you hit the M key, it just flips the whole thing. So if you're zoomed in, tough luck. You know, you constantly have to repan. Maybe there's a really smart reason why that's a good idea. I just don't know what it would be. I just don't know, friends. Okay, now something about this I definitely don't like. I want to see more of a swoop like that. So this is a great example of, you know what, just erase it and start over. Just get rid of it. Because he's kind of leaning back, you know, contemplating this thing, right? Let's keep the sketch simple. And maybe some indication of a sword, I suppose. Probably would make sense. That seems a little large as far as the handle goes. Okay. Let's save our work. Okay. So now what we're going to do is go grab this, Control C, and then here I'm going to go Control Shift V, which for me is a hotkey I've set up for pasting into the frame. Okay, and then I'm going to hit Control C again, Control Shift V again, so I can just, it really doesn't make sense to redraw that when it's just changing position, right? Okay, so save our work, Control Shift A so we don't have a selection, and then back to the B key. Okay, now I am not gonna, Let me think about the weight here. Honestly, this is wrong. I'm gonna move that more, and then on this frame, I'm gonna move it more over here, because really his shoulder should change position, you know. He's rotating around, so there's the, you can't see it, but here we go. Okay, so now the question becomes, how would this body weight, right now the body weight is centered here, and so he is leaning back a bit. So I think his whole, I think his whole torso would kind of reconfigure a little bit there. And then this would stay in a relatively same position, because as he's turning towards you, obviously his torso gets wider as it faces you, kind of thing. So, okay, we've got a little bit of a tangent there for those who are anal about tangents. So there's something to think about. Okay, this could wiggle out like that a little bit, because it's a one frame tween. Okay. All right, so now we've got this. Okay. Boom, boom, boom. This is really coming out fairly wide. Okay. Wrinkle, wrinkle, wrinkle. All right, let's that's your shot. Not much to it, is there? But when you cut it into the show, you know. All right, so now I want to think about, for sure, from a storytelling standpoint, when we've had 2 shots in a row with the soldiers, okay? So from a storytelling standpoint, we have no memory frame of reference for his other arm. So I'm going to say, I'm going to do that. I'm going to say, let's put it in there, just because that feels good to me. And this could be, let's see, there's the elbow. Gosh, it almost feels like you're going to want one more frame to... Yeah, that doesn't work at all. Yuck. Okay. So this actually... This is one of those things that might be like one of these anal little things that you turn it into a big important thing when it's like something that doesn't matter at all. By having his hand up there, Yeah, I'm not buying it. I think we should just actually keep it together. So this is wrong too. Yeah, you try stuff. Whoops. You try stuff. Sometimes it doesn't work. Okay. Okay, again, we got some latitude here because it is a one frame tween, but so it definitely complicates the drawing a good bit by having that other hand in there, but you know, what are you gonna do? It feels better with it than without it, I think. Hey, Chris K. Sorry I didn't notice you there. Lurking around. Okay. I think that's it. Let's give it a crack. Yeah. Definitely better having the other hand, which is not drawn very well in this last frame, obviously, but boom. Okay, so we're going to want to cut to close. Clearly, in this case, I'll break my rule of one shot, one Krita file, one shot. I'm gonna break that for this. Boom, boom, bop, right there. So right here, this is gonna be a cut, because all it's gonna be is a change in expression, really. So let's keep that on the rule of thirds. And this guy, we'll cut him. I think that's too much. Okay, let's just check that. Okay, and then if you're going to do this, because it's like switching to a longer lens kind of thing. So let's add a Gaussian blur to this frame. So a little focal blur in the. What do you think about DALL-E 2's? And now that's interesting, Chris. Everybody's talking about it. Amar's obviously been talking about it. If you're on my Discord, there's a bit of activity there, chat and whatnot. This is the topic of the day. This is the thing everybody wants to talk about. So rather than just talk about it, I would say, let me turn that question around on you and ask you, what do you think about it? You brought it up, so you probably have some opinion about the implications of AI generated art, right? How does it make you guys feel as artists, knowing that there's technological solutions out there that for some people probably makes them feel like maybe they're going to be made, obsolete. Your skill set might be obsolete. Is that what that feels like? Or is it just a question of whether it creates good art or not? Boom, boom. Okay, so I'm going to just erase these guys. Obviously, this is all red pencil, so it's not like it has to be all that perfectly delineated anyway. Oh, I see your comment just popped up there. So I'll get to it here in half a sec. That feels pretty good. Okay, and I'm going to actually just erase this. Let's just assume that we probably can get some interesting expression. Out of there. Okay, so now let's just look at the whole kit and caboodle. Boom. Yeah, I like it. Feels good. Okay, you've tried them and they seem very good. I believe artists will coexist and inspire and get help from them. If you see it as such, then there's no threat to me as an artist. Save us a ton of time in researching. Well, that's for sure, because if you can just type in a creative criteria, if you will, and then, you know, in reasonably sensible English, you know, it's effectively doing all your research for you and creating the art, you know. It's pretty amazing. I think that everything, this actually comes back to what I was saying about the 9 old men in a way. In a way that wasn't so true with, you know, when CGI happened, everybody thought it was going to, that the computer's going to do all the work, right? And it turns out the computer does a lot of work, but the actual creative work of expressiveness and acting is still really up to the human craftsman. Well, I do believe that, especially if you're dealing with more simplified approaches to animated storytelling, you know, like 2D, or even more, you know, if you're looking at Family Guy versus anime versus Disney, 2D animated Disney, there's quite a wide gamut of requirements, right? The requirements for South Park are quite low. I think that we're at a place now that we were not in when CGI hit. The difference now is that I really do think the AI-driven tools will be able to replace some of the artistry and really quality storytelling that humans can do. I do. You don't see it in the animation space yet. You're seeing it with DALL-E and whatever the other one was. I forget the name. Stable Diffusion. With background paintings, or, you know, whatever kind of paintings, it's we're there. I mean, it's only going to get better, and basically digital artistry is now off the chart. So it hasn't happened to animation, it has happened to art, and it has happened to writing. Okay? But it just kind of changes the job description, I would say. You know, it becomes more about I mean, I guess I won't waste a lot of time speculating, but I think that I've always been a proponent of an approach to creativity that I call CDS, or copy, deconstruct, and spawn. And it's really powerful. In other words, other people may be different from me, but what I find is if I anchor into something and then begin to really deconstruct it, it could be a single frame of just a single frame, a freeze frame from an anime, for example. Or it could be a whole movie. It could be a lot of things, but when you look at it, if you're like me, you can take that one frame and then you begin to copy it. You know, you think about how did they do what they did? Maybe there's some special effects. So you're thinking about, well, if I was using my software tool, how would I do that? You know, so you begin to think about deconstructing what you're observing, right? And what's interesting is, for me, when I do that, like with a piece of music, for example, I take a piece of music from some artist that I like, and I maybe figure out what a couple of the chords are, or a couple of the melody lines or whatever it is. Again, others may be different, but for me, immediately when I do that, when I just deconstruct a little tiny piece of it, immediately my brain begins spinning it off in all different new directions. I mean, I can't help it. I immediately will start to derive a new song that's genuinely different, but starts from the same place, kind of thing, right? And so any creative work could be argued to be a knockoff. You know, it's a knockoff. We stand on the shoulders of giants, as people like to say. Everything is really derivative of everything else, and you can prove that's true because you would never have a creative idea if the bones of that idea were not already in your emotional memory in your mind. You know, correct. Okay, so in the real world, you guys are absolutely right. The content overload was what we saw when desktop publishing became possible. We saw it again when flash animation became possible. Anything that's been a technological disruptor, you see it now in the animation space with explainer videos, where you have these characters that are actually fairly appealing characters, but they're very simple. They're like SVG things, you know, that are very simple geometric shapes, but they're reasonably high appeal looking characters, even though they're grossly simplified. But if you're satisfied telling a story with characters like that, it's really, really cheap and easy now to create the characters and to animate them too. The tools are quite good, and so then it becomes all about storytelling. So it comes back to what I was saying earlier about the fallacy of thinking that animation will ever carry the day in a story. It doesn't. It never will. It never has. It never did. You can marvel at the way Milt Kahl built the weight into the movement of Shere Khan. But Shere Khan moving would not have kept an audience engaged for an hour and a half. It just won't. Because anything you see that's amazing creatively is novel. This is an important thing to understand, friends. Whatever you observe that's creatively novel is really impactful, and especially if you're a young person, it can actually impact your life for years, where it really changes what you think you want to do in your life and what you want to aspire to, because it gives you this, because it's just such a disruptively cool thing. You know, that's kind of like what I experienced probably the first time I saw paintings by Frank Frazetta, let's say. The thing is that the novelty wears off pretty quickly, right? It's cool for a little bit, but then it has to fit into a broader context where it just serves the purpose of that context. So Shere Khan, as beautifully as he might have been animated by Milt Kahl, is only of real lasting value in the context of a story that was otherwise entertaining. And that's a function of a lot of things. It's a function of the script. It's a function of the casting, the voices, the choices of voices. Choices of voices, that rhymes. Obviously, the animation's important. But so as these tools become available, what those tools are doing is they are changing the context. They're disrupting the context. The thing that you can hang your hat on as a creative person, though, is that the emotional dynamics of creativity are the same. And I can speak with some authority about this because I have creatively accomplished quite a little collection of things that most people don't. Okay, I've created. I've written a screenplay. I've done a musical score. So these are completely different arenas. Obviously, I've animated a TV show here. So you've got animation. You've got deconstructing voices for purposes of voice acting and figuring out how to capture a character, you know, with voice. what happens emotionally in that creative process is the same. Whether you're writing code, like if you're programming, code, music, animation, writing, it's all the same dynamic in terms of taking an idea and then you feel emotionally it can go in this direction, that direction. Does that feel good? Does that entertain you? There's always going to be a place for that. And so the tools might save you some work on the front end. When you talk about your research, Amar, this kind of saves you on the front end. But they also can save you on the back end when it's time to actually execute. You know, the comment I made on Discord is if I can generate a background image like a forest or something here for my show, instead of writing a script, you know, this is just an example of where you want to kind of work smart, is instead of writing a script and then trying to get the software tool to generate the right background for what's in your script, why not do it the opposite way? Just let the tool generate whatever it's going to generate and then make that fit into your story. And so now what we're doing is we're having a negotiation with the tools. We're working interactively with the tools and allowing them to both serve and steer the creative process. And what you'll find is some aspects of it will be the easy stuff that 80% of the people do that will become quickly overused, and you'll just see it again and again. So an amazing looking AI generated painting is going to become extremely boring extremely quickly. It will not lose its value if it's plugged into a larger context like a background in a show. Okay? And then in the meantime, yeah, there's going to be AI that makes it easier to write scripts. There's going to be AI that makes it easier to maybe animate things or whatever. So Chris says it's kind of sad to think that for future movies, animation will be created on the fly by AI and you won't have the hype. You will not have the hype or the ability to talk about it with others. It'll lose the magic. Well, you got to remember, Chris, that we already have the dynamics of that, maybe moving a little more slowly, but we already have the dynamics of that in history. In that, a lot of people had the same exact response to CGI when in replacing hand-drawn animation. Now, what we've actually seen happen is they were correct, but two things happened that were interesting. One was that, and I saw it in movies like Tangled, you know, and really a lot of the Pixar stuff, obviously, but and a lot of that's become boring because we've seen the same kind of creative ideas over and over. They're not interesting anymore. I haven't seen anything palpably new in CGI animation in at least 10 years. You know, that to me was truly new and special and different. Okay? But what has become standard is really good. You know, the way that the way that characters are portrayed in any Disney or Pixar movie, it's become a bit of a formula, but it works. It is appealing, you know. But when CGI came around, it was lamented as the death of 2D animation. What's now happened is it's just come around full circle. CGI did its thing. To a degree, it lost its novelty. It's more important that the stories be good than it was before because the technology and the artistry that engenders doesn't carry the day. Exactly. Arthritic one. I like your comment. I think that's right. And now it becomes both a creative and a social choice. It's not about, you're not going to pander to CGI. Now that CGI is so old, you know, it's been around for, gosh, almost 30 years. You know, good CGI has been around for 25 years. Okay. So you're not going to gravitate to that just because it's the cool thing. And so now it's like, well, actually for me, when I really think about how these media make me feel, I actually enjoy a very, very dull, quiet, slice of life anime. Genuinely enjoy it more than watching almost any old classic Disney movie you could name or CGI movie you could name. Well, why is that? I don't know. I don't know. It's just because of the way it makes you feel when you watch it. It's not just the animation. It's partly the characterization. It's partly the story. It's partly the music. It's the whole attitude and emotion of the thing, right? And the fact of the matter is, there's no right answer. It's all good. Um, and you like what you like. And so I think it's a really good time in history to be creative, and it's a very good time in history to consume that which is creative. Um, to a degree, I mean, it's tempting to say that the only downside is the prevalence of certain levels of creative work maybe makes it harder to make a living in those fields because it's become too easy to do, kind of thing. But I think in the big picture of things, I don't think so. Chris, the reason I deleted the other episodes was simple. The full 30-minute episodes are probably about 15% chopped down from the content that was in the webisodes. So the problem is, I mean, that these are better shows now. I mean, it's absolutely a better show. I mean, I felt that way, and I've had other people say that to me. It was always my intent to create full, 24-minute episodes, and I released the webisodes just to kind of just throw them out there and let people kind of see the progress and this sort of thing. But once I was ready to pack it into a real show, there was no reason to keep the webisodes up there. So basically for me, people can watch the episodes and hopefully they enjoy them. So this is I mean, it's an interesting topic, but you get me blabbing, and lots of things are interesting topics to me. I think that this shot as a pencil test is pretty much where it needs to be. I think this looks pretty good. And by the way, that Chris, that's not off topic. It's a perfectly legitimate question. Is Sifter around tonight? I mean, there's another guy that's doing some really, really cool work, kind of in the independent anime space. I think he's doing some stuff collaboratively with some other people right now. But really talented kid. Did that guy move there? Let me see if I saw an illusion. Oh no, okay, I was looking at best bar. Okay, so this probably needs to be about 40 frames. So at the end of the day, the thing about it is, as we continue to evolve as a culture, the thing about it is that we're coming into a time where I think that the shared creative experience, both of as creators and consumers, and actually being both at the same time, is it's really interesting. It's really interesting. In the animation space, with people like you guys that are probably more into animation, the thing I usually see missing is that for whatever reason, people can't seem to they either can't get together to generate a story and work, collaboratively towards something bigger than just a 7-second, animation test or whatever. And honestly, I'm not sure why that is. All the time I've been in the creative space, I've found that to be true. Is that people, they want to do it, and of course, obviously, if you can go get a job doing it, then great, whatever. There's certainly opportunity. There's certainly a lot of opportunity out there right now for somebody who's got some, some skill. But it does baffle me to a degree why there aren't more things like what I'm doing, actually. It's kind of surprising to me. I would enjoy trying something that's more collaborative. Probably not on Salt and Light, although I might. If I mean, I already mentioned this to Ross is if if somebody stepped in and said, hey, it'd be this would be cool as like a direct to Tubi show or a whatever, and there was actually some budget there, then I could certainly see um, outsourcing, outsourcing some of the animation work, I think. But nobody's beating down my door, right? And so I'm not necessarily expecting that to show up any time soon. And that's one of the reasons why, if you really, like I said, I think at the beginning today, if you put a gun to my head and said, what are you going to do? There's a big part of me that says, I might as well just do the whole series, the whole 12 episodes, um, and then release it, because that's what people want anyway. They want to binge on a show. And the more I think about the idea of releasing, well, would I want that? I would say, hey, dude, you're like a one man studio. That's really cool, and I would think it is cool. However, it would also be annoying because you got this, this episode out there, and then you're having to wait quite a few months in some cases for the next one. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. I'm just thinking out loud. At the end of the day, it probably doesn't matter that much what you do or how you do it, because it's not like anybody else really cares, You just do what you do. How about this? OT. How about this OT? Okay, I don't know what you mean by OT. Usually around here when people say OT, arthritic one, they're usually referring to OpenTunes. Hopefully you'll be seeing a new slew of subscribers now that CSP is going subscription. What's your plan after you finish the series? Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, and I'm not. I mean, Amar is a big fan of Clip Studio Paint. I am not. I think it's fine, but I'm not a. I'm just not really a fan. I have it, and have not particularly enjoyed trying to use it. And I have good friends who feel completely differently than me about that. So, but if they're going subscription, that means that I assume they're kind of doing the Adobe type thing, and that means that you're going to pay forever, right? I assume that's what you mean by that. It's a good business model, that's for sure. If it wasn't for a subscription model, I mean, that's what really pays my bills, actually, is the fact that I have commercial clients, commercial media clients, for whom I provide services where they pay me a modest fee every year, you know. And so that's why I'm able to sit around and make cartoons, actually. So I'm quite grateful for that. So I can't really criticize a subscription model, that's for sure. Um, version 2, they'll no longer be updating the perpetual license model. I think perpetual is going away to version 2. Yeah. Chris asked me, "What's your plan after you finish the series?" Can you clarify your question there, Chris? Do you mean uh, do you mean for the series from the standpoint of like distribution, or do you mean what are you going to do next, kind of thing? I'm not sure what you're asking me there. Right. Yeah, the interesting thing about the subscription model is, for good reason, everybody crows about it if they're used to the old model. But I think people get used to it, and certainly the people that are, you really can't blame the company either, because think about it, the people that are really using the tool professionally, whatever they're charging is not much compared to the value that the person's getting from the tool. You know, and I say that obviously as a guy who uses free and open source tools. But, you know, that's just a choice. I mean, I used to use Anime Studio Pro, but I've used Blender for 20 years, so I've always been a bit of a open source software kind of guy. Perpetu. Oh, next film series? Oh, I don't have a clue, dude. I wouldn't even, I wouldn't even speculate. Now, I will say there's some possibilities in that the show I was working on before I started Salt and Light, about the character named Akari, that's a fun show. That show had some really cool possibilities, but my partner Valerie has been working on essentially an urban fantasy novel series, book series. She's actually working on book 7, I think, as we speak, and it's it's pretty good, and I think that developing that into something like either an anime type of thing or whatever might be on the agenda. So we'll see. I think it would also be interesting to work on something like this that's more of a serial model where you're almost like the old days of the Sunday comic strip or whatever, where you're like web comics, where you're putting out a short episode, like 1 minute or maybe 2 minutes every week, something like that. I think a serial format would be interesting to try. Obviously with the webisodes, I was sort of dancing around with something kind of like that. But what makes a serial format interesting to me is it's like being a reporter. A reporter has to, they can't sit around and wait for the muse to strike. They have to start typing, right? Because they've got to generate a certain number of words that day, and that becomes what your life is and so sometimes you generate something that day that turns out not to be the greatest thing you've ever written, and you accept that. You don't agonize over it creatively because there's no time. You have to deliver today. And I think that's a good thing. That I mean, obviously some of the greatest cultural entertainment concepts of our time came out of that. It was when Stan and Jack were creating the Fantastic Four, or whatever, the Hulk, blah blah blah. They did not know they were creating history. In fact, quite the opposite. They had years behind them of basically just kind of barely scraping by. I mean, the marketplace was very brutal to comic books through most of its history. It still is, actually. So these guys are just cranking the stuff out because that's their paycheck, and you gotta come up with something this month. There's something beautiful about that, about the serial format and the demands that it places on creative people, because you become real pragmatic about what you're doing, because you can't agonize over it. You're on the payroll. You got to generate something today. Just rock and roll, baby. Come up with something. And so then you learn to beg, borrow, and steal ideas from all over the place. You know, I mean, the Hulk was basically a variation on Frankenstein, according to Stan, if you can believe, you know, Stan's story about it, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just an opinion. I think there's something about serial formats for things like this, like an anime, in a serial format where the whole thing from the very start was conceived as something where it's released 1 or 2 minutes at a time as an ongoing episode thing. That I find quite interesting. And it's probably actually a really good approach for anybody that's wanting to sort of dip their toes into the pool of creating this kind of stuff, because it's kind of low demand, you know? I mean, can you come up with 1 minute worth of stuff? And if you can, then that sort of greases the skids a bit and gives you some momentum, or, you know, I guess to a degree enthusiasm for taking it to the next level and keeping it going or whatever. Okay. Frankenstein, Jekyll and Hyde. Yeah, Jekyll and Hyde, right. Hulk's your favorite all-time character. Most resembles you. Okay. Abusive childhood. Yeah, it's kind of funny because the Eric Bana Hulk movie was kind of panned, from what I recall, but I actually thought it was a pretty good movie. I thought it was quite well thought out. Way better than the Ed Norton one. The Ed Norton movie was just stupid, as far as I'm concerned. It's just like as stupid as you can get. Like, there's nothing there. That's the way I felt about it. At least with the Eric Bana movie, they kind of tried to, you know, make a comment about the angst that this guy, Bruce Banner, had in his life, you know. Maybe I'm remembering it wrong, but I do not remember being at all impressed with the Ed Norton movie. If I could change into a Hulk, I would sometimes. How the word makes you feel. Well, I'm sure a lot of people feel that way from time to time. Well, yeah, and I forget the guy that played the Hulk in the Avengers movies, but I thought he did a good job. I thought he's certainly a decent actor, and I like the spin he brought to the character. Again, this is just a... Okay, we've got a problem. Undo. The system kind of grabbed the mouse buttons wrong. Boom. Boom. Okay. I think I'm going to actually put the string in last, after this is actually colored and everything, probably. Don't much see the point of putting it in there and then just having umpteen little areas to color in. And I'm actually going to leave the sword out. I've decided the sword isn't... I don't think the sword's that important for this scene. Boop 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 boop. Okay. Obviously that's tween. Goes by pretty quick. What time is it? Man, I've been going for 2.5 hours. Well, that's the good thing, friends. Once I start live streaming and actually work, which obviously I'm talking to, but once I get working, it's actually one of the reasons I wanted to start live streaming again, is because I knew it was time to start working on animation, and I figured if I'm live streaming, yes, I'm blabbing, but at the same time, I'll get stuff done. Oops. It's a nice framework. I wonder where Maria is. It's kind of funny. She's kind of disappeared off the face of the earth a little bit. Maria Torres. Boom, boom. He's got that Kevin Bacon nose. And cheekbones, actually. Vespar is not voice-wise, but certainly face-wise. He's based on Kevin Bacon. I have no idea what this thingy-dingy on his helmet is supposed to be. It's just like a decoration kind of thing. Boo-doop, boop, boo-doop, doop. So I'm gonna quit. I'm probably gonna quit. And boy, that sun is coming in bright, man, right through the front window. Probably gonna quit in just a couple minutes here. Actually, I don't even know if I'm gonna finish the black ink before I am ready to quit. But I'm just warning you guys that I'm getting a little hungry, actually, to tell you the truth. Hey, I've been doing the Wim Hof thing. Amar, I bet you know what that is, don't you? It's kind of funny because the Wim Hof breathing techniques are definitely interesting. But the thing, and I kind of poked at it quite a long time ago. But you guys know what I'm talking about? Wim Hof? I'll type it in here. He's known as the Iceman because he's done some amazing things from the standpoint of cold exposure. And so he's basically got a whole protocol of both breath work and basically cold showers. And I've been doing it, and it's amazing because it only took me about 3 days to acclimate, where like I can get up in the morning and hop in the shower and immediately go to full-on cold. I didn't use no hot water at all, just full-on cold. And I actually like it better, I would say, which is really weird. But it really energizes you, man. It's kind of amazing. So if anybody, I don't know if you guys know what that is. If you know who Wim Hof is, he's got a pretty good presence here on YouTube. Boo-doop, boop, ba-doop, doop. Oh, come on, really? Yeah, I'm definitely starting to get a little bit hungry. Getting hungry, people. Got to go get something to eat. What I ate for lunch today was literally almost 100% out of our own garden. Meaning kale, Swiss chard, garlic, potatoes, tomatoes, green beans. Make this spectacular spicy spaghetti sauce, and then I actually put it over mashed potatoes, and it's like it'd be just like a casserole grandma used to make or something. You know, I mean, it's incredible. Super easy, super fast, totally organic, totally healthy. Crazy, huh? Yeah, and what I found was for somebody who wants to try it, if you want to experience what it feels like to experience the cold exposure that Wim Hof talks about, my recommendation is you get in the shower. You can go hot first, and then what you do is you turn the hot off so it starts to get cold, and then let it go on your head and really scrub it around like this, you know, because what happens is then it kind of splashes all over you, and you start to get used to it quicker. It's not as much of a shock. The hardest thing is on your back. You turn around and it goes cold on your back. It's like, ah. And it takes I would say about 2 solid minutes. And then It's like swimming in a cold thing. After about 2 minutes, you sort of get used to it anyway. So you just have to get through that first couple minutes. But no, I mean, there's a lot of benefits to the all the body's systems, the lymphatic system, the your immune system, the cardiovascular system. There's a lot of benefits that accrue from cold exposure, and because Wim's such a freak of nature, there's been a fair amount of study of him. You know, reasonably good science. Uh, looking at what he does and how he does it, and so anyway, I just mentioned that because it's something I've been fiddling with, and it's kind of interesting. Interesting if you're into that sort of thing. Okay, we gotta bring that in there. Let's hit the N key. Yes, see, look at that. Look what I just did. That's horrible. I'm probably gonna have to quit here shortly because I'm starting to get sloppy. I'm starting to get impatient with the work, and that's not good. We don't want that. So this. Was that the G key? Yes, the G key. Okay. Let's see what happens on these 3 frames if we delete the red. So that would be Alt-M for me. Multi-frame, go. Okay. So now, we're going to see what we have, and then I think we'll probably call it a night. I like it, guys. I mean, the timing of it, the body position, the tween, I'm basically saying I think it feels pretty good. Anybody want to disagree? I'm open to it. Yes, and Wim does that too. He actually, you should, if you really want to do gardening, Amar, you look into. I mean, if you're in Chicago, I mean, if it's urban, then you want to look into some sort of hydroponic. There's ways you can do indoor or window gardening. That works. It's becoming a bit of a science, actually. So, anyway, I think with that, I'm going to let this roll through a couple more times, just kind of look at it, glory in the beauty of my wonderful work, such as it is, and I think that's it. I'm glad to be back, and I expect I'll be sticking around. So I don't know if I'll be live streaming again tomorrow, but it is kind of likely. And with that, I will say, as I always do, my friends, that there will be more later.